We have an exciting program on the stage this morning, and we'd like to open it with two really exciting speakers in what is an important conversation. I'd like to introduce Dr. Ernest Moniz, Department of Energy's Secretary. He is tasked with implementing the Department of Energy's critical missions to help grow the economy, enhance our national security, and protect the environment. This includes advancing the President's all-of-the-above energy strategy, maintaining the nuclear deterrent, and promoting American leadership in science and clean energy technology. Prior to his appointment as Secretary, Dr. Moniz had been a member of the MIT faculty since 1973. At MIT, he headed the Department of Physics, the Bates Linear Accelerator Center, and founded the MIT Energy Initiative. Joining Secretary Moniz today is Ratan Tata, who is the chairman of Tata Sons from 1991 to 2012, and presently serves as its chairman emeritus. Tata Sons is the holding company of Tata Group, composed of over 100 operating companies, operating in more than 100 countries across 6 continents, with global revenues exceeding $100 billion. He is president of the Court of the Indian Institute of Science and serves on the Board of Trustees of Cornell and the University of Southern California, as well as several philanthropic trusts. Mr. Tata also serves on the board of directors of Alcoa and on the international advisory boards of Mitsubishi, JP Morgan Chase, and Rolls-Royce. Please join me in welcoming both of them to the stage.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. It's good to make our annual visit here to the ARPA-E Summit, and we'll say more about this later, but with Chairman Tata, we had the chance to be down on the floor this morning, and I'll let you give your reactions to that, but I think it was, he looked extremely excited, I would say, in being there. Ratan Tata is, as Cheryl already said, was chair of Tata Sons for quite some time, 20 years, and she mentioned the scale of the company, et cetera. But I think what's quite remarkable, not simply the growth in the company over that time period, but I think the shift from a company that was really very much internally focused in India to a company that is, my understanding is like 2/3 international revenue. Right. So it's a very, very different focus, and that couples into the innovation agenda that Ratan has put forward. I will just say that I got to know Chairman Tata fairly well when I was at MIT, as we shared our interest in clean energy and energy technology innovation. I would just say that, as I think will come out of the discussion, he's an entrepreneur of a rather unique sort. If you just take his automobile interests from the Nano to the Jaguar, you get an idea of the diversity of technologies. But also in terms of his vision and decisiveness, I'll never forget when we went to Mumbai with 2 colleagues from MIT to propose a very interesting and novel program that we'll come back and talk about. But for this purpose, I'll just say that it's great to have an executive who listens for 30 minutes and makes a decision, and then the program move forward. So again, it's terrific to have you here, Ratan, and we'd like to start the discussion. In fact, let me start by asking you for your takeaways from our seeing quite a few of the technologies this morning that ARPA-E has funded.
This morning, in walking around, we just sort of skimmed the iceberg, because I was struck by the quality and the innovativeness of some of the projects that we saw, the quality of thought that went into it, the farsightedness in terms of its application. And I've just come away tremendously impressed by what little I saw, and there's a lot more to see. So I compliment the group for putting all this together, funding many of the projects that were being funded. And I can only say that this is what the United States has been built on, innovation.
Would you have an impression in terms of like the risk profile of the projects?
Very difficult.
How that would match up with your own business decisions?
Well, as we went around, we found, to my surprise, that a couple of three projects where the Tata Group had already joined hands in terms of the execution of the project or the application, which pleased me no end because it meant that we were open as a group to looking at new technologies. It's difficult to form an opinion because the breadth and the width of what is being done is so wide and so varied. But all I can say is that an hour's tour through this doesn't do justice to what there is there.
Well, we'll be happy to structure additional investment opportunities for you after the walk around. And he has asked for the portfolio to look over. One of the things we saw this morning was quite a few of the novel technologies clearly had applications in what I would say are rural settings. And I know in India, of course, that's a huge issue, and I believe you're very strongly committed to that. What's your view in terms of how technologies can actually get into the field to address this issue of underserved communities?
Well, several of the examples we saw this morning, or the couple that we saw, revolved around producing energy or electricity or cooling with minimal use of power and minimal use of energy. All of India today has a deficit of energy, and most of rural India needs energy for raising water and agricultural pumps, and also getting light in the villages in the evening. And maybe the future tells us that big mega power plants may not be the means of electrifying rural India. It needs a new paradigm of microgrids and smart grids and energy efficient machines such as what we saw downstairs. So I think it has great application in a place like India, either taking the strain off the grid that exists today, or helping electrify India. And what a revelation that would be if a village could get light in the night, or could not have to fight for energy to raise water for agriculture. And these are some of the links that we saw today. I think are extremely important for developing countries.
Do you see, how do you see, let's say, the entrepreneurial community, in some sense, having access for really implementing at scale these technologies? Almost certainly that must engage the government, for example, and do you see how a community like this could be interacting, I guess, with the private sector and with the Indian government, for example, to actually affect a large-scale transformation? Because it looks like the technologies are really coming, but how do you actually get it out there?
It's interesting you should say that, because what normally happens in developing countries is one doesn't look at technologies or considers new technologies to be too sophisticated to be applied in developing countries, and traditional technologies are what these countries turn to. But today, new technologies and state-of-the-art technologies permits things to happen that could not happen with traditional technologies. And the time is now that countries need to embrace new technologies to solve old problems, or problems that you felt were endemic to that country, and you could, in fact, transform that. So I think the time has come when countries like India need to recognize application of high technology or current state-of-the-art technology to solve some of the age-old problems that exist and solve them a different way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That then reminds me of the program that we discussed some years ago, and that is being implemented on, I think, what's sometimes called frugal engineering. That may not be the right term, but perhaps you could say more about your vision in that direction.
In terms of energy, or
well, energy or other areas of innovation, but the idea again, because I think you touched upon it, the idea of, in some sense, advanced technology for including for solving old problems in, for example, rural settings.
Well, in many areas, if you applied new technologies, you'd end up with a situation where something that could not have been done or could not have been conceived is now possible. Whether it be road transport, whether it be finding energy as we have, looking at new storage problems being resolved, energy storage problems being resolved, looking at low-cost photovoltaics printed on paper or things of this nature. It's endless. And I think having institutes like this, or MIT, or the joint venture that we've formed in India to address low-cost problems or rural problems with new technology, be they medical devices or be they energy-related products, is really the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we open the world and open people's eyes to the fact that it's not something that's unreachable or is beyond the reach of the common man, but can make a difference, we will be opening a new era in the developing world.
That kind of somehow brings me back to the Nano. Maybe you could describe a little bit about the history of the Nano, the status of that initiative, and what your plans are going forward. In fact, it reminds me, this morning we saw the printed car, which we understand will be down to a long dinner for ordering your vehicle. And relative to the Nano, given its weight and cost, et cetera, I'm not sure if that should be called the micro or the pico, but anyway, what's your vision now going forward from what you've learned with the Nano experience?
Well, much of the 20 years I spent was focused on an area that excited me, and that was car manufacture, and we the third largest car manufacturer in the country. So I set about a concept of producing a $1,500 car. And predictably, I was advised by a lot of sound advisors that I was embarking on an impossible project. And the project got conceived because I saw families of 4 and 5 riding on a scooter in a very unsafe manner. And I thought it'd be great if India could produce a people's car that could hold a family of 4 or 5 through bad weather, rain, nighttime. And we pegged the price at about $1,500. We set about producing that despite the advice we got. And we put together a young team in the company. I think the average age might have been 25 or 26, which added to the good advice we were getting not to do it. The chairman of the company, i.e. me, was often considered to have lost his marbles in pursuing this mindless project. We ended up...
And the current judgment is?
Pardon?
No, it's...
Well, the marbles are up for grabs to see whether one was foolish or bold. But we launched the car at a motor show in Delhi, and a four-door, five-seat, two-cylinder car which could go on Indian roads. And we never anticipated that it would create that kind of interest, not only in India but elsewhere. What happened thereafter was a series of unfortunate events. We got stuck with a politician in West Bengal. We had to move a completed car plant to Gujarat in a year. We lost a year in the process. We lost considerable amount of excitement on the product in that year. So the car is selling, but not to the extent that we had hoped. And the most unfortunate thing is there's been a real dichotomy in terms of what the car stands for. We produced an affordable family car at $1,500. To the consumer, doesn't want to be seen in the cheapest car because it offends his status. So what we tried to do was the very thing that has worked against us, and we're relaunching the car at a different price point with a larger engine and basically trying to recapture the piece of the market that we had hoped we would have.
Is that, however, then moving away from the original vision?
In a way it is. But at the same time, it's addressing the market as the market wants to see it, which happens to be what we need to do.
So this seems to go back actually maybe to the earlier theme as well, that what we're looking at is first-class engineering, but maybe with reduced functionality. Would that be a way of...
I think as an engineering project and as a project that took current day technology and applied it in a marketplace, it's been very, very rewarding. In terms of it being a roaring success, it hasn't been what we had hoped.
And so again, if we go back to the technologies we saw this morning, for example, do you see lessons from the Nano that should be further internalized by our entrepreneurial
I often
audience?
wonder whether if we had launched the Nano in Indonesia or in Africa, would we have had a different response?
I see.
And whether this is typical of India. But as far as the United States market is concerned, there's a great tendency to try something new, to be on the frontier, rather than somebody saying, well, I consider myself to be inadequate because I'm driving the cheapest car. And so what lessons we've learned in the Nano, I think, merely say that you can't produce a $1,500 car when the gurus of the industry say you cannot.
I see.
But the fact that we saw a 3D printed car downstairs as an interesting car, I think that's the kind of thing that the United States is so well known for, people trying to give a chance to something that's new.
Interesting. In fact, that maybe brings me to a maybe slightly different point. Looking at kind of the global innovation system, I think, we may have in mind the idea that, well, okay, you say in the United States, for example, will have great companies, and then those companies, they innovate and they reach out to other parts of the world, including developing markets. But I would say in your case, it's a company that started in one of those developing markets and then has reached out to the world. And I'm just curious what you learned, what you think we should learn about the role of India or other countries, China, in terms of the global innovation system.
Well, for India, as you know, we have had 50-odd years of post-independent protection. The barriers have existed for people coming into India, except in very few cases. And Indian industry has had the luxury of being protected and therefore less exposed to the competitiveness of world products. All this changed in 1990, when India finally opened up its barriers and walls to the entry of new investment, not to the extent that we should have, but greatly different from what we were. And when that happened, there was one set of the industrial community that scurried around the corridors of power trying to ensure that protection continued, and another segment, which included me, which said, let's go out and reach out with the products and the services we had, and could we establish ourselves in other countries? We did this with partial success. The greatest move we made were gutsy moves of acquiring major companies overseas, like Jaguar Land Rover, which gave us a fit above the product range that we produced, gave us access to latent technology that existed in those companies. And again, good advice was that others had not succeeded with these companies, so of course we would not. And so we were stupid. And for a while I thought that advice was correct, because the downturn was there at the same time, and everywhere you went, you sort of had your stupid hat on as a indication of how reckless you had been. But it's been a marriage of great reward and great satisfaction, I think. All we did was tell the company that you make your own destiny. Let's work shoulder to shoulder to regenerate the glory of the two brands. And the team at JLR has, in fact, achieved that.
Okay, interesting. Do you you don't want to get into politics, but the relatively new government in India certainly went in with the expectation of being, shall we say, more business friendly and I think more innovation friendly. Do you see that playing out? Do you see there being a lot more opportunity in India for say, our entrepreneurial community?
Well, I think if I could spend a few moments just talking about the landscape. We've been ruled by the Congress Party for several decades. And this last election showed that the country was eager to see change. Mr. Modi led the BJP party to a landslide victory, which we have not seen a majority government since 1984. It's always been a coalition government, full of compromises and moves to hold a loose coalition together. Then suddenly we had a majority government with a charismatic leader. And immediately after he won, he spent the energy to go overseas and re-establish India's ties with Japan, with China. He tried with Pakistan. And more recently and most memorably with the US. Now he has everything going on his side, but as you rightly said, with very high expectations from the people who want to see change. And he has committed himself to bringing down barriers that hold up investment or hold up the movement of foreign investments in the country. And I think now the spotlight is on him and his government to make that happen. It's still, in a manner of speaking, early days, but it's shortly not going to be so early days as we go along. And the people of India will be watching with great aspiration in terms of what can happen. I'd just like to say that the potential in India is enormous. It's the policies of India that stifle development. You've got 1.4 billion people. You've had a growth rate of 8% in the past. It's a country of relative shortages, and therefore the application of anything relating to growth is enormous. And it's got a young workforce. So there are many, many pluses to what could be done in India. And hopefully Mr. Modi and his government will tap those potential points and see India grow. And I think the other thing that happens in India is the country is very entrepreneurial. We're often referred to as a country of shopkeepers, but everybody wants to do something. And so the potential for foreign investment to come in and incentivize development in India is very high.
I see. You've made some very positive comments already about U.S. kind of innovation system, and that has many facets, of course, including the research university system, and which, if anything, in my view, has gone in an appropriate way, a bit closer to the marketplace, actually. Certainly in the energy space that I'm familiar with. What is the situation in India? Do you see an evolution in the same sense?
Sorry?
An evolution, for example, in the university system, getting more engaged in the entrepreneurial activities, closer to the marketplace, or still more in the kind of the traditional mode of arm's length?
Well, I think you and I have been involved with starting a transformation when MIT joined hands with us in looking at creating a innovation center in India and in Cambridge, in Boston. Hitherto, there's been an equal protection kind of environment with Indian institutes who do not wish to join hands with overseas counterparts in terms of attracting innovation, because there's still a hangover of protection that this is our domain and not yours. The best thing that could happen in India is for Indian institutes to embrace innovation from outside and participate in it and welcome it to India. And that is in many ways yet to happen. But what you're saying is absolutely correct, that that's what would make the country move forward.
When President Obama was in India just a couple of weeks ago, I think we were all pretty excited, actually, at the nature of the discussions, very positive. And one of the things that the Department of Energy agreed to do in that interaction of the President and the Prime Minister was to expand the Department of Energy's technology collaboration with India. Our programs like energy efficiency, renewable energy, have been probably the principal interlocutors for us. I'm curious what advice you could give us for our collaboration to be on clean energy technology to be more effective, number one. And number two, do you see us potentially engaging ARPA-E more in that kind of collaboration?
I see all of that. I think the recent visit of President Obama to India was very much a landmark second visit, because the Prime Minister and the President covered a lot of ground, and covered it not with undertones of conflict, but with a very open sense of friendship. Yes, the President announced collaboration on the energy side, and if India has to grow at a particular rate, the one thing that's going to hold it back is the inadequacy of energy. Electric power on the one hand and fossil fuels on the other, or alternate sources of energy. It's that which is going to mobilize India and support its growth. Without it, it's never going to happen. And we have a tremendous deficit of energy today. And if we grow, the deficit is going to be greater. In the past, we've had an outlook that says, well, we can do just so much, so this is where we stop. I think we can do much, much more together, embracing the technologies you have, technologies that are on the horizon, and applying them to India, as we mentioned a few minutes ago.
Do you, to get very specific, how do we get more ARPA-E technologies exposed to Indian business, Indian societies? How do we get them beginning to be part of the solution much more effectively?
I think I don't have a prescription for that, but it's just opening up the country to business interaction where innovation and technology, doesn't matter whether the company is American or whether it's Indian, but if they come together, it's interesting that many of the stalls that one saw downstairs seem to have Indian presence, either in terms of researchers or founders or such. And why could this not happen 10 times over between the United States and India, be they in India or be it in the US?
I may now be accused of losing my marbles, but I'm just thinking here, perhaps, I don't know how this would happen, but maybe we should have the kind of a good part of the ARPA-E exhibit in India.
Pardon?
Maybe we should move the ARPA-E exhibit to India.
Believe me, if you did something like this in India, an exhibition like that would be swamped. Because people are hungry for ideas, and they don't exist in India, and they see a smattering of sort of superficial. This is really something that is opened my eyes in terms of what can happen.
Well, maybe we have an action item.
Well, maybe we do.
I'll bet we'll have a lot of volunteers from our entrepreneurs. No, that's actually this in real time. I think that's maybe something we should talk about. Actually, I think it could really have impact.
We should not let that comment that you made just be made and die. I think there's a great deal there that you could do.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So actually, as time is running out, that may be a good place for us to leave it. We have an action item. We have, I think, a lot of eager entrepreneurs here, and maybe matching. That may be a good way of our so-called technology to market program, because that'd be a great market. So, Ratan, I don't know if you have any last bit of advice you'd like to offer our community?
No, I don't, other than to say that deeply impressed and most appreciative of the visibility that you're willing to give a country like India and make the technology available in a very open manner. And I salute you for that.
Well,
and the
thank you.
department and the US government for making that possible.
Great.
I
Well,
think we could be on the threshold of seeing a new era of Indo-US relations.
well, if we can certainly help with these kinds of technologies, both in terms of solving the very severe problems of the vast number of people who are underserved in energy in India, but also at the same time be addressing climate issues that we all faced, that would certainly be something that we would love to work on with you. And I want to thank you again for, you've really been an extraordinary contributor to the whole global activity. Thank you for sharing this. I thought it would be an interesting kind of different perspective for our entrepreneurial community to gain from, and we thank you for that. Thank you.
And all I'd like to say is that I've been very humbled by seeing the size in this room. And thank you for putting me here.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie.
That was terrific.
Thank you.
Okay.